Evening intuitives. As you can see, if you watched my last poetry video, this one's been being uploaded right after it. Because see, my hair's still sticking up there in that spot. Come on, go down. Perfectionism and all that. But anyway, I'll somehow ignore that despite my crippling perfectionism and get into the topic of this video, which is why abusers, particularly narcissistic abusers, try to slander INFJs and label us as crazy. But before I get into, my talk, I'm going to ask a question of all subscribers and viewers of this channel. And that's, please click the link below and donate to help me raise money for Same You by the end of the month. I actually updated my donation page too, because I wasn't aware that I could personalize that to the extent that I can. But somebody from Same You was nice enough to email me and basically tell me, hey, you should probably put on here why you're helping us with this fundraising event. You kind of just have a barren page with your picture on it. I'm bad at social media and I work double shifts, but I thank them for letting me know that so I can at least make an attempt to personalize it, as best as somebody who's not really into social media can do. So I did. So please go check it out and please donate. Now, and subscribe. But back to my topic. So all of us INFJs at one point or another have most likely dealt with somebody labeling us as crazy. And the reasons behind it are usually because while when we're younger, and even when we're older, we're not the most likely people to speak out against somebody abusing us. We're usually one of the first ones to speak out against somebody else being abused, particularly if it's somebody we're close to or we care about. We'll put ourselves in harm's way up to the point of resorting to physical violence. That's just in our nature. So as INFJs, we're idealists and we see things the way, they should be. Like we never understand like, well, this is messed up and needs to change. Well, why don't we just change it? Like why, if it's broken, why are people so hesitant to change? Like this is wrong, this is what needs to be done, this needs to change. This is how we implement it. Like what's the problem? Like the idea of somebody just not liking change for the sake of change and liking the status quo just for the sake of status quo doesn't register with us. We can't comprehend that. But sadly, that is the case, and they're especially like groups that are commonly known as, depending on where you live, as either the old boys club or the good old boys club, very much are resistant to change and are very much fans of the current status quo in their situation because they benefit from it and are more times than not given special rights and privileges within that organization at the expense of others. And these rights and privileges, are given to them for many reasons. They usually include how long they've been at the organization, who they're friends with or grew up with, who they're related to in the organization, are they members of specific religions or social clubs, those kind of things. I assume everybody's familiar with, what is commonly known as a good old boys club or an old boys club. And they're typically older. In most of these situations, the vast majority, but not all, quote, members of these organizations are older white men. Though truth be told, I have seen a few female members of old boys clubs. Yes, not nearly as many as the men, but they exist. It's probably, I would say, it's kind of like the reversal of the witchcraft community, where the witchcraft community is predominantly female, probably 85% or more. The old boys club is probably 85 or 90% men, white men usually. So, why do they go after us? Well, our integrity, of course, as I've mentioned before, but we're the ones likely to speak up about somebody being abused. We're most likely to try to rally people around the idea of change and to change the status quo. And they don't want that. And deep down, a lot of times, they know that what we're saying is true, and usually we have, we gain the support of others, and then it grows and grows, and we get people to rally around us and try to implement the change that we're talking about. So how can they stop us? If a lot of people around us are agreeing with what we're saying, and we even give, because we're systems people, ways to implement that change, they have to try to discredit us. Since they can't discredit the change we're trying to implement, they have to discredit it by discrediting it because it's coming from us. So, because we're unlike most people, they'll go for how we're different. INFJs are often described as eccentric. I know I am. So, they'll try to tear us apart as weird, as crazy. They'll say we're emotionally unstable. Um, because INFJs, we're likely to go on anger rants about like exploitation and double standards and things of that nature. I know I've been doing it since the 90s, and it can be terrifying to see, in a real life scenario. I mean, you see it in fiction too. I think Emilia Clarke did an amazing job during her Daenerys rants. I mean, that's what INFJ anger looks like. I mean, I don't know anything about acting, but I know, what an angry INFJ looks like, having been one myself for 34 years. And yeah, that's, I couldn't imagine anybody, at least anybody who's not an INFJ themselves, doing a better job. So, just a fictional representation. It's also a good fictional representation of, an INFJ fighting for change, being labeled as crazy, though I still say to this day, the best fictional representation of a status quo old boys club trying to discredit a INFJ by labeling him crazy for doing the right thing would be Fox Mulder from the X-Files. To give you a fictional representation of an INFJ on a crusade to create change, the truth's out there, and he's trying, to out the government conspiracy about the existence of extraterrestrials. That's his personal crusade. That's what drives him. He's an INFJ, and they don't like that very much. So, hence why, if you watch the show, he was pretty much exiled to that little basement office in the FBI in that fictional universe, and was, designated weird, eccentric. His nickname was Spooky. It's also my nickname in ninth grade, but that was, not because I was into extraterrestrials, but because I was into witchcraft. So, just, two fictional examples, a male and a female, of INFJs who were trying to do the right thing and create positive change, who were labeled as crazy. Now, what can you do in these situations? You're never going to change the opinion of like a narcissist or an abuser who's out to get you, to preserve a status quo environment where they're given special privileges or where they hold power. Just be open and honest with the people who support you. Be honest. They can't. That's the nice thing about the truth. They can't discredit what really happened. So they'll resort to things like slander. And there will come a right time for you to defend yourself against things as slander. But as INFJs, we're usually pretty good at being open and honest, and the people who actually know you will know, that the slander that the groups are trying to do to discredit you, to stop the change, is a crock, basically. And if the time ever comes where, they have to defend you, they can. You can't let it get to you. That's another important part. INFJs, ENFJs too, if you're listening to this one, all types really. There's no convincing people like that, people in those type of like old boys clubs. That more than likely they're beyond reach. Because without that environment, that old boys club environment, they couldn't make it on their own merit, especially if they're older, because, the world has changed very much from, say they're in a profession they've been in 20 years, it's a lot different from when they came in. They certainly couldn't compete in a true competitive, meritocratic system. So they're trying to keep you down to preserve the system that allows them to have their special rights and privileges. You have to push through. You know damn well, all of you by now, that when you do the right thing and it actually starts to be effective, that people are going to come after you and try to slander you. I'll use my own example. I've posted on here links to my 2 news articles about, the bullying and hazing and retaliation I faced at the Arlington County Fire Department. Go read some of the comments on those. I tried to keep away from it at the advice of someone who, given their job, would face quite a bit of, slander and people trying to defame them. I mostly listened to this person, but, you hear things from other people like, did you read what they wrote here? And it's like, I shouldn't, but I'm gonna. You can't let that get to you. If, especially in a lot of these cases where they try to discredit you as crazy or mentally unstable, they don't have any evidence to back it up. Like, especially if you're in a situation where you've had psychological evaluations, or you have been or currently in therapy, and the professionals, especially if there's more than one, aren't finding any evidence of that, then don't worry. Don't let them get in your own head. And that's what abusers love to do. Abusers love to get in your head and try to convince you that what they're saying is true. I mean, just to give you a little insight, like, after I got to the fire academy last year, I was the happiest guy in the world, and finally I waited 15. It should have happened 15 years ago. I'm so glad to be here, and I was confident, and I was a natural leader. You know, like less than a month into the abuse, I was essentially or probably suffering from imposter syndrome, and that's what abusers want. If they don't want, they want to convince you that you don't belong in whatever organization you're in, and that you have no right to be there, and that you're not good enough, and that you don't fit potentially their small narrow mold of what a person in that organization or profession should be. And if they can't attack you on your own merit, if they have to resort to slander, then they know that what you're trying to do is right, and that they're just trying to preserve the status quo. I can't say that enough, and this doesn't happen just professionally. This will happen like in your personal life if you're trying to expose a narcissist, like someone, a typical narcissist who's probably an adulterer, an abuser, things like that. If you're trying to rip that mask off and expose that person for who they really are, that person's going to try to slander and discredit you in order to preserve their precious status quo. Because if the world could see that person as they truly are, they wouldn't be able to function because they live in their own little fantasy world. That's just a little insight in what to expect, why abusers will try to slander you when you try to do the right thing and cause change, and what to expect when it happens, and to let you know that you can't take it to heart. You can't let it slow you down. You know, we're not the type that really care what people think, like random people, in fact. And I know for some of you that may make you hesitant to speak out. You have to push through for the greater good. It's not high school anymore. Do the right thing. You'll feel better for doing it. And don't care what a bunch of old boys think about change. Remember, they're dinosaurs. They're on their way out. They're clinging to the past. In a lot of cases, the 1980s culture. But they're clinging to the past. They're clinging to the era of when the baby boomers were in their 30s, and that's gone. That's empirically true that the baby boomers are not young adults anymore. That era has passed. So continue to push through, help create positive change. It's in our nature as INFJs. Don't worry what others think about you, but never sell out your integrity. Trust your intuition, and donate a few bucks or quid to same you. And I'll see you next time. And subscribe.